Today's guest is David Kenney, a business leader who's taken an extraordinary path from selling orange juice door to door as a teenager to becoming one of Australia's most sought after business advisors. David has helped hundreds of companies achieve successful exits, mentored countless entrepreneurs, and is now building innovative ventures spanning from AI-powered farming to music artist development. In this conversation, he shares profound insights on leadership, the overlooked power of training, and why the best salespeople don't actually sell. Get ready for a masterclass in building customer-centric businesses that scale. Fantastic. Well, great. Welcome, everyone. And I'm here with David Kenney and really excited to have this conversation with David. David is someone that has had an incredible career of great leadership and working in all sorts of different businesses in the accounting profession, a lot of startups and advising startups for a long period of time. And I think a place to start is to really go back to the real early days for you in terms of your own sort of business journey. Where did the spark to become involved in business come from? Can you think about the sort of early memories of where you were inspired to get involved in business in some way?
I think it goes back a long time to my first job where I used to get in. It sounds terrible. Like I used to get into a van with this guy and a number of other kids. Now, these days you think, what the hell? But we were going around the streets and we'd go knocking door to door at night time. So who answers the door at night anyway? And we'd be selling orange juice on a subscription business. So it was almost like my first B2B or B2C actually, subscription business. And we had to get someone to buy an entire 52 weeks of delivery of orange juice. And
big sell.
Big sell. It's a big commitment. For whatever reason, I excelled at doing that. And my numbers were exceptional. I do this while I was at school, but it was my first job. And then I got flown down to Melbourne to train people on essentially how to sell. And then, been taken over to Fiji. And I also found that I was very good at negotiating at the stalls or the open areas that people were selling product. And, my stepfather at the time was horrified that I'd be negotiating with these people. But I always found just having a conversation and keeping it light and fun and that sort of thing was stuff I really enjoyed. So, and then somehow or another, I ended up in accounting. But yeah, but I found my way out.
you really started. I mean, as a young person, as an entrepreneur, right? You sort of engaged in that activity as a young person, and then so how did you then transition from doing that and then thinking about getting into accounting?
Well, my stepfather at the time, who worked for Bond Corporation, and my mum's not married to him anymore, but great influence. And he said, "Chartered accountants will inherit the earth." I had no idea what that meant, but he said, "Look, if you look around, every board, every major corporation is run by accountants or a lawyer or something like that. So you should be one of those." I'm going, "But I like science." But he said, "No, do that." So I joined this very entrepreneurial accounting firm, and I thought, "Oh no, I've made a terrible mistake here because everyone's adding up numbers." And I'm going, "This isn't me." But then I saw this guy everyone was running through the corridor when he'd get out of the lift to catch up with him. And he'd be then on the phone screaming at clients. I'm thinking, how can someone scream at their clients? He must be very good. So I'd see him going to the lift, and I'd run to the lift and get in the lift and say, "What are you doing today?" And he'd tell me, "I'm buying a company, son." I go, "Oh, wow, which one?" He said, "I can't tell you." I'm going, "But if I were you," and I thought he's very entrepreneurial and he was strategic and things like that. So I quickly thought, I can't quit week one. There must be something here, and I need to find out what it is that makes these exceptional advisors good at what they do and why they're indispensable as opposed to historians of the information. And so I discovered that, and then I also worked with in corporate. In the firm, we set up a corporate division. Me and one of my other partners. He was exceptional at the detail, exceptional partner. But I found myself, I really enjoyed the transaction side and working out how to position a company to sell it. And so through that process, we ended up selling or being experts or selling hundreds of companies. And then the natural bent was then when you sold companies, you'd meet entrepreneurs, and these entrepreneurs would think, you're helping me with this and that. And I'd say, this is much more interesting than what I'm doing, and I want to spend time helping them. So that then I ran into a really clever tech dude, as I call him, and he said, can you help me? And we ended up sorting him out. And then he said, you should come on, have a beer with me down at Everleigh, and there's this guy called Nicky Shivak, and come along, look at joining Start, mate. And so I'm not a tech dude, and met Nicky, and he said, well, we don't have one of you. Like, you've sold hundreds of companies, so love to have you. And that was another starting point of being exposed to more really clever entrepreneurs. And then also through a really good lawyer that was on the board of a couple of the university student unions, said a lot of these really smart professors need help negotiating how to spin their IP out of the universities, and how to negotiate, and how to position what they're doing and sell and get into another country. And I go, I can do that.
Yeah.
So met some really great entrepreneurs through that process, made lots of friends. I still do mentoring at universities for very clever people. I just enjoy helping people. I enjoy the business side of being able to work out how does the product need to be positioned, what's the customer need, what is how do we sell it, how do we price it, what's it solve. I mean, it's just stuff I like. I love learning and seeing an economic outcome, which is an outsized return. Like, one of the first businesses I sold it sold a lot of money, which is more money than most people had seen in a lifetime. I thought, this is what I love. This is what it's all about, is getting these outcomes and helping. But then, not just, is it luck, or what is the DNA of the process around how to create those outcomes? What do you need to do, and what are the real things? Because there's so much noise out there about you should do this, you should do that. Dissecting what the key things are, and more so, not the answers, but the questions you need to ask. So if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right outcomes. And knowing that where to start, what to listen to, what to say no to, and that it's almost like a lifetime game of chess. You can never become the best. You just have to keep striving for mastery at this. And it's like capital allocation, hiring, raising capital as well, and knowing what to spend it in what order, and what best to make, and what timing you're looking to see things pay off, through to leadership and training and culture, through to building sales teams, choosing co-founders, deciding who you will let invest in your company as a founder. So auditioning investors rather than holding the begging bowl out. So
it's a big puzzle, isn't it? I mean, it's a huge puzzle that you're looking to solve, essentially.
Yeah.
And with that early experience, you mentioned this guy that was, yelling at his customers or whatever initially, and that was like, what's this guy on about? What did you find out from him in terms of his process and the way in which he sort of interacted and thought about sort of developing business and relationships with customers? Things that stood out, you saw how he sort of approached a new customer conversation or something like that? Was there?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I've never really thought, what was it about him that was successful? He was exceptionally good at putting a deal together, and also the tax knowledge around that. But he wasn't afraid to stay out of his comfort zone, I guess, because he would saying, we're going to raise money for this, we're going to do an IPO, we're going to sometimes do things that you might think you have no right to believe you can do, but somehow or another, and being connected, and again, knowing how to put a deal together, it would happen.
Quite bold then.
Yeah, bold, yeah. Like, as I've heard lots of people talk about the analogy of what's an entrepreneur? Well, it was Christopher Skase and Alan Bond, but now an entrepreneur it's a household word almost, And we've had entrepreneurs for a very long time, but we potentially have had very much of an economy of, we've got some really good entrepreneurs, but it's become more commonplace. And as Australia's become more on the map with developing outstanding companies that have had critical success globally, it becomes more of a mainstream, and people have an understanding. There's accelerators, there's lots of grants that people can get access to. Maybe not enough, but there's still lots of avenues. And also success breeds success. So you're seeing a lot of the early stage Canvas and safety cultures and a whole bunch of exceptionally good companies that are getting some money off the table, and that's going back into new companies. And that knowledge, more importantly, is that hard-fought knowledge is being shared. And some of these guys are helping out other companies, and that's what it takes. Great accelerators around, but it's still fascinating.
Yeah, it's sort of a flywheel, isn't it? A system that sort of builds momentum over time, and you get some success and role models, and then you can kind of develop out of that.
People see it, so they can imagine it. Not everyone's got an imagination. But yeah, look, we've had some exceptional founders in Australia. I mean, one of my very close friends is founders of Big Commerce, listed on NASDAQ. There's just so many good examples, and it's great to see, and there needs to be more.
How would you describe him? I mean, his style of leadership and what he's been able to sort of achieve. Are there things that stand out that are really sort of clear signals of his sort of style?
Well, I think the thing that really strikes me of him is that he's one of the most intelligent people and hardest working, and works things out, and just but then brings the team along as well. And they weren't afraid to ask for help. They openly admit, there's not a lot written about them, and particularly this guy, but they sought out really good mentors in the US. That knowledge is very, particularly 10, 15 years ago, was not mainstream. Certainly not in Australia, but being able to access that information, and also getting on a plane, going over to Silicon Valley, which is like talent and finance and knowledge dense, and going to see that. But they also went and found some great people in Texas and Dallas, Austin rather, and you just go and learn. And that's again, you learn it.
It's a learning capability.
It's a rate of learning.
Yeah.
And are you prepared to do the work?
Yeah.
But also then, and what they both did, the founders, which was really, I think, a very smart thing, was they found someone they felt that was a better CEO than they were. So they appointed that person. They took it to a very large number. They said, but it needs to go to this number now. And so that's the self-reflection and understanding, what is my season? Where are my limits? And they wouldn't have been able to get a good CEO if they hadn't done the amazing initial work. Like, one of the hardest things in the world is to build a piece of software that people buy and keep buying. And they did that really well. Yeah. And then they found a person that also, and they also found a COO who was one of the most exceptional people that I felt was just an incredibly good hire of people. And that's one of the biggest game changers, is being able to find the right people, but also keep them on the path of wanting to do a good job as well. And might sound silly, everyone wants to do a good job, but people know when they're in a good team, and they know that leadership is keeping them on track and setting them up to win and challenging them and making sure they feel part of the place, and all going after a common target. And that cohesion of what he was able to also achieve as well. And it takes a number of people. When I spoke to him, he would openly say, well, I was just part of the team. And that's also, it wasn't like boss, I think that's important, that people feel like we're all equal, we're all team, we're all got to get this job done, and we're all going to chase it, we're going to win.
Yeah. Strong team orientation.
Strong team orientation.
But when you reflect on your own sort of leadership style, and I mean, you've had a very successful career with Hall Chadwick and building that business as a partner there. over many years. How would you approach things? How would you think about the team and building that culture in the business over time?
A professional services organisation is very different in some ways to a product company. So you need a lot of people. You need to keep them productive. You need to train them. You need to do a whole bunch of things to keep the oxygen in the tank high. And so I think in the similarities are that people want to know, they want transparency, they want to know how we're going, they want to know where we're going, they want to know what the leadership is, they want to know, do we have a plan? Are we consistently clear? Are we consistently delivering and treating them the right way and training them as well, like giving them, and sometimes it may not be technical training. It might be, so-called soft skills, which in my opinion are hard skills. Because, I used to say this all the time, that no matter what you did, if you could communicate better, you'd do it 30% better. You could be the world's best anything, but if your communication skills are up there too, you do it 30% better. Because you can be an expert at any discipline. People need to know what you know, but they only care about that once they know how much you care. You've got to look after your team. You've got to. It's a hard job, and I think that COVID set up a situation where there was just so much expectations on the corporation. It became their everything in some ways because they were stuck, and it was a terrible situation, but. There was so many different types of leaders. So there's people that can be charismatic. There's people that can be visionary. There's all sorts of different things that a leader could be, but what a leader needs to be. And I think one of the key things is integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. Tell bad news early. Be open and upfront about what is beyond your control. And that's not magic pill or magic formula. It's just really, knowing it's one of the most important things you've got to do is you've got to lead and you've got to train and you've got to bring people along. And if you don't do that, your customers won't be happy. So I have this expression where I say you put customers first, but team are very we're in the Olympics at the moment, split second, hundredths of a second. And if you do that, and then your stakeholders third, your shareholders, you win. So isn't that what you're trying to do? Don't put yourself first. Put your customers and team first. A team likes doing a good job. A team genuinely likes seeing progress and winning and all that sort of stuff. So setting that up so that it can happen, equipping people, giving them the agency and the accountability and the belief and the training. It's the role of a leader.
Yeah. When you think about experiences over time, are there sort of leadership challenges that you see come up time and time again that are sort of things that leaders need to overcome? Maybe it's hiring related or it's,
I think that leaders, it borrows from concepts of sport and there are similarities, but in the context of business, it's essentially the head of the team and the challenges that they have. They've got to decide where do I spend my capital? Do I hire more people now? Do I put more money into training or staff? Buy more staff? Pay more on marketing? That capital allocation is, I think, right at the top of the tree in terms of the decision making, because what leaders need to do is they need to make better decisions, and you're not always going to get it right, but you've got to be having that thirst for learning and doing it better, having a little bit of humility without appearing weak. So the things that I see the mistakes made is that sometimes they're not good leaders. They're good operators, and sometimes people get promoted to a leadership role that are just good operators.
Yep.
And they get into something, and that's why when I started writing this book, I said, well, how do you actually set up a business? Well, first thing is you've got to look at yourself and work out, well, what are my weaknesses? What are my gaps? What's my style? how do I work with other people? Am I suited to this? Am I better, or am I better a lieutenant? Am I better technician? Own yourself, own your position in terms of your skills and your preferences. I think sometimes you see a poor leader is when they talk about my subordinates, or they talk, their remuneration first.
It's all about them.
It's all about them. If you instead you look to, well, how am I going to do a great job? How are we going to set things take care of themselves? How are we going to be this level of competency, this level of our reputation, because it's all about repeat business. And there is no business if it's one-off. So you got to do a good job, and you've got to build the thing that builds the thing. And then you've got to make sure you have the right people wanting to stay in the team, and so training, self-fulfilling prophecies of I get better, they get better. But my job is to help them get better, so we can all, because there's no leverage in one person. So we've got to be able to work out, how do I get technology, people, capital allocation, so therefore hiring and spending right. Because a lot of these companies and the CEOs that come in, sometimes their companies are successful in spite of them, and sometimes it's because of them. And we don't necessarily have a real level of knowledge sometimes of what the reasons are. Like, can you look at executive remuneration and boards, and who might be on a panel to decide? Do they really know what the reason is? What is a board now? What does a board do? It's a good question, I think. How much of it's spent on governance? How much of it's spent looking at, are we taking enough risk? How much is spent on, is the CEO a good leader? Are they getting the results? Are they short-termism, long-term? What are the bets they're making? Are they making the right bets? Are they making more good calls than bad calls?
Yep. Also, how are they shaping the culture, which is not something that's kind of often on the board's agenda, is it? So,
well, the culture comes back to what we chase. So we go, we're sales-led. I think we're going to have sales. Yeah, it's important. Or, we don't tolerate this, or we don't tolerate that. Or it comes back to, starts with integrity and saying, how do we win, but also do it in a way that we have a business going forward. We survive a setback. If we lose one thing, we're not all over. So that's the risk management element of a good leader too, so that they're not going through one-way doors and thinking, well, if this doesn't work, but they've also got to take enough risk. So they're educated risk and not wanting to get to the truth, and seeing that that's my job, is to help us make better decisions for the long term.
Yeah, and a willingness to be wrong too, and to say, okay, I was wrong there.
Yeah.
Admit it.
How many times people say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's not...
Yeah.
What percentage of the time I hear that conversation? Not a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult thing to do, isn't it?
But that's where it gives the freedom of being wrong and saying, look, we got it wrong. This is what happened. We thought this and we were wrong. Yeah. But we're going to do better. And that, you see that with leaders, like some of these cybersecurity threats that have happened, and realities where people's data have been leaked and they try and hide it or cover it up.
Yep.
Or say, well, this has happened and it didn't. But I mean, a lot of the time with cybersecurity stuff, and you look at the Startgrowth website and look at Richard Boxall, for example, he's arguably one of the most talented advisors in this space, and a lot of the time it's not a technical issue. Someone just made a mistake, and that left let's call it a back window open into a system. The people, the culture of an organisation and taking the right risk and taking the right precautions, if people don't own that and care about that, it exposes the company. And I think boards are increasingly interested in, how do these things happen? It's not spending more money on IT sometimes. It's just spending the right amount of training on your team so that they know the consequences. They say, my job is to do this, but your job is actually, we're all working for the company. So what's the right thing for the company is to follow the procedures. Let's have the right procedures. But how do we know which ones are the ones that are overkill and which ones are the right ones to follow? That's knowledge. That's where that learning and getting the right people in to help. Say you could spend $5 million on $100 million on cybersecurity stuff, but there's probably $20 million that makes the 90% of the difference. And that's where asking an expert is so important.
There's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value. And I mean, I think a lot of these issues come down to culture too, right? In terms of, is it sort of reinforced by leadership that these things are important things to be paying attention to, right? It's a little bit like the customer experience. Do we really tolerate whether or not we treat customers poorly or not, right? Whether that's a high priority or not. And so, I can see that.
You're right that if the team don't feel like the CEO cares about them, how are they going to go with the customer? Look at a classic example of people might think it's a little bit of an old industry, but retail or even hospitality. You could spend $2 million on a fit out, $500,000 on rent, and you could do brilliant. You could have every person coming into the store on the foot traffic in perfect position. The customer walks up to the desk and the 19-year-old says, "You're right." Now, a tiny bit more training on that communication, a tiny bit more training on how to build that relationship and what their role is, and not thinking this is a stopgap job. I'm at how little training people do. And look, of course, the margins and the competition is fierce and rents, etc. But it's like saying, I don't want to win. Is that last piece of the puzzle where people will just refuse. And there's some unbelievably talented people that will say, you do these three things and you use this database or this platform to know that your teams did this. And you see the difference between the results that certain retailers are getting versus other retailers. It's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, and it's all people related.
It's all people related. It's all how you set them up to win. And training has been given lip service. We do training. And some training is like, it's a profit center. It's all these handouts, etc. Magnificent book that Peter Ritchie wrote called The Magic of McDonald's, and a lot of people used to look at the resume of someone, they've worked at McDonald's, great, they've been trained well. It's true. He was very instrumental in taking that level of training to the next level. He had great training that the US had developed, but then he said, we need to put more into that training. We need to put more of our profit into training. That's how important it is. And I tell you what, it paid off.
There's a great quote, I think, from Richard Branson. I think it's to do with, if we train our people and then they leave, why would we do that, right? But then, if you don't train them and they stay, is the problem.
Yeah.
So, I think it's an investment. And you see, I think a lot of super successful businesses, a common denominator is that investment in people, right? They've got tremendous capability in those people in their teams.
Yeah. Well, I think that training's had a bad rap because a lot of people think, no, we have to do training. But the people that have had good training, that's helped them not only in the job, but also they've become more confident. They've become that knowledge and that ability to communicate, for example, that's applied in their relationships. That's applied in life. It's not just at work. I'll only use good communication in work. It's actually it's a life skill. And that, to me, that's why a lot of the longevity of looking after people and training them on the right things, and that's the secret. What's the right thing? You can do countless hours of wasted money, and potentially our productivity has that really increased with all this money that's been spent on training. If not, that's because it's the wrong training. So it's the wrong deliveries, the wrong processes, what's been given lip service. And if it's given lip service and the CEO doesn't back it.
Yeah. I think some of the best programs that we've been involved in over many years has been where the CEO's part of those training programs, right? They turn up, they're there, they're leading it, they're engaged, they're a learner as well.
Yeah.
So it sort of sends that right signal too that, hey, this is important. It's important for me and it's important for everyone.
Yeah, there was when I first, you asked me about, what I remember, I just remind me of something. Everyone used to be Mr., when they started. It was like there was something to aspire to.
Yep. Very formal and sort of, this is, and respectful, right?
There was a respect. There was something that these guys had made. They had this respect. It was a very prestigious, role and etc. But I'm wondering if people lost that.
Yeah.
Are people still wondering, do I still want that? Or is that a function of maybe they think, well, what's the point? There's no work-life balance. Or I'm never going to be able to afford a house anyway. I may as well travel on holidays. But, if someone is just starting out, having left school, and I would say that finding that person that teaches you stuff, not necessarily by, belting you with it, but really nurtures and mentors you, and, you seriously appreciate that help and effort they're putting into you, that is gold. To have that learning of what life's all about in business. Probably 80% of businesses are the same. Create a product, sell it, create distribution, reinvest, think about the next product, attraction, retention of clients, developing better and better teams and better processes. Those things happen with good people. There's only so much technology. Good technology is written by good people. Like it or not, we still are the central theme in success, and so training and knowing which people fit in what team or how they would fit into a team in a more cohesive way, and are we ready to hire that person yet? What do they bring? Do their skills and their aptitude and their own style fit in, or are they going to be a grind, or how does that how does that work?
Speaking of that, most businesses, all businesses have this where you have conflict, right? You have teams not working well, or individuals not working well together. How have you sort of approached those sorts of things where you've got those sort of issues that pop up inevitably, right?
Well, I guess it comes down to how have I approached it? And firstly, it's hard. You're saying I've got the answer for this, I preferred this one earlier. I think from listening, trying to understand the other person, where they're coming from, asking good questions, genuinely being on the side of everybody, putting the whole team first, not being selfish. So how to get cohesion? I think within my teams, I've had a very, very, I've had exceptionally good teams over the years. They're good and bad. And I think the times when I have not been as happy with my teams have been when I have been maybe a little less self-reflecting and thinking, I can do anything, I've got this, and maybe being a bit too ahead of myself and not thinking, hang on, I'm not important in this. I am the least important person in the room. So that humility, as I got the more I learnt, the more I realised I didn't know. Yeah. And I had to try harder to make everyone else win. It wasn't about me. Yeah. It was about the team. Yeah. And people know when you're not bullshitting and you really are genuinely digging in and you're sitting down next to them and talking to them about, what happened with their girlfriend on the weekend and what, a little bit of that's really important to build trust and connection. A lot of times, I would say the first firm I worked at, everyone was a mister and there was no one, you just didn't mix with people. But being approachable and letting people know, look, you're a person too and you make mistakes. But I'll probably make less mistakes, hopefully, because I've got a bit more experience. But they just want to be treated with respect and heard and recognise that they have problems too, and it's not all about what productivity they had. It's hard running a business when people either have a bad day and blow up at other people and bring everyone down, or and work out, sometimes there's less steam off and And then it's balance. It's just it's not easy. I would
Yeah,
say.
no, it's a challenge.
People, easy. Said nobody.
Business would be easy without customers and people involved in it, right? No employees, no customers.
No employees, no customers.
Yeah,
We all go home.
so easy. Yeah. Something we've talked about quite a bit, over the past several months is around narratives, right? For the CEOs that are great CEOs and great founders of businesses, yes. They're good at telling the story of their
Massively
business.
Important.
And it's a skill that you've got, and you've coached a lot of different leaders in this area. I mean, how do you think about that process, that narrative of developing that? What's the sort of way in which you tend to approach it and think about it? I think that'll be really helpful for people.
Okay. Well, I like to think of that conversation, the customer, we put them in the middle of the page and we think, what are they doing? What are their life like? What are their challenges? What are the processes that they suffer through? How can they get better, richer, faster, have more, relation, whatever it is that our product claims that it might be the solution for. And then I try to say, let's break it down and work out, are we telling the truth? How do we make it simpler, more clear, more human as well? How do we create connection with people? How do we explain their world better than they can describe it themselves? So they feel like, hey, we're an insider. We've seen this problem. And here's what we can do about it. And they don't feel like they're alone. There is actually a problem. It's a real problem, and no one's been fixing it. And they're feeling like, I thought I had to suffer through this. We think we've got something that might help, but would you like to try it? So not selling is a really big difference. Like inviting people into the room and building trust and genuinely having an interest in them and solving a problem for them, as opposed to going, look, I've got this pen, you need it, or look, keep buying this, it's not bloody much use and you're the wrong customer for it. But so it's around getting the right customer with the right message and the right product. It's around getting to really understand them. Are they the right customer? Is this the real problem that they have, or is this like I've got a problem I've got a solution looking for a problem? Yep. Is this a present and real pain? What's their workaround? What's the cost? Where is this in the value chain? How easy is it to implement? Is this a distraction? Is this not going to fit into the sequence of what they have? What's the cost? What's the price point? What's the value? What's the chance of success for them? These are all the different metrics that I look at and work out. Okay, I've just spoken for 2 minutes. Tell me in 10 words. Simplify it.
Yeah.
I love that movie with Denzel Washington. He says, explain it to me like I'm an intelligent 6-year-old or something like that.
Yeah.
We don't need jargon.
Yeah.
We just need to say, it does this for people who have that. Or whatever the simplest version of the problem is.
I think it's a great insight also there, David, on the importance of, you're really sitting in the customer's shoes to say, let's get on the same side of the table as the customer and look at what's their world look like, right? What are their priorities? What's important to them? Yeah. And really, really getting that insight to be able to do that effectively. Yeah.
Every business has to do that. Going back to accounting, and I used to see some people say, but this isn't working, or they haven't got this minute right, or they haven't got this perfect journal or this perfect whatever. I hate to break it to you, but no one cares. Why do they come in? Oh, because they have to get a tax return done. No. The ATO said they have to lodge a tax return. That's not because of us. That's not even why they're here. They just go, I want my life to be easier. I want to get on with what I'm doing, and if you can help me do that, and you've got to, therefore, discover. You've got to have that product or that customer discovery to work out, is this a fit for them? And trust, if people consume your content, they build trust, they'll buy from you because you've actually done the work to help them as well. Yep. So people like doing business with people who they like, who add value, and they go, and sometimes people go, well, why are you doing all this stuff? Like, there must be a catch. And building that trust and adding value and showing people this is a solution without selling to them.
Yep.
A lot of people say that, salespeople have sales commission breath.
Yeah.
But The best salespeople don't sell; they create buyers.
They're really creating a customer, aren't they, in many ways, because they're solving the problem.
They're just helping. They're just helping. They're saying, "Is this an issue? How do you do that?
Yeah.
That must be bad. Yeah, but I do this. How does that go? Oh, well, is that going to work? 9 times out of 10. How much time does it actually take? You've got to find the surface area of the problem.
Yeah.
Understand it from every angle. It's not just your product. People don't care about their product. They care about their problem.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of leads me nicely into sort of getting a bit more perspective on some of the things you're working on now. So you're a founder of a business and co-founder of 2 businesses. Tell me a bit more about what's going on and how you're fitting all this in, right? It's a busy life.
Yeah, I'm breaking my rules when it comes to focus. But in some ways, look, I mean, I just decided that I wanted to change, and I had a friend that we were going to go into business together. A personal setback that he had. We're still very good friends. And I decided, what I wanted to do was to focus on helping companies get to $100 million in revenue. Sounds a bit lofty. But again, I knew I could do some parts of that. I knew I had to get other people involved who have very deep knowledge in certain areas, because it might be sales, marketing, hiring, etc. Whatever the gap is that the person has, I wanted to have a situation where I had the best in class inside the tent. And so I set up Start Growth, and that business is essentially like the Harlem Globetrotters of business. Or as another one of the friends who was also an expert on the group says, this is the Westfields for specialist advisors. But it's not so much just advisors. People will get in with you and solve the problems. They won't just say, here, I'll try this. Or it's like, let me write this for you. Let me do that for you. Let me make this part of the puzzle happen.
Yeah.
So that's what Start Growth is. It's a marketplace of world-class experts that have got knowledge in a key number of areas that are the secret to unlocking that success. And we're sort of divided into 4 swim lanes, which is technology, which includes growth and also AI and machine learning and cybersecurity. The second is, which is not really a sector, but selling. So both marketing, sales, etc. And then the third is in property, because there's really only 2 significant ways that people get wealthy in any country, and that is through either business and property. So we've got some amazing people in that part as well. And then the last thing is health and wellness, because to be honest, if you don't have that, you don't have anything else. So again, pick from all the people I've worked with in the last 30 years, exceptional human beings that are both nice and incredibly knowledgeable. Shared this idea to them, and they said, love to be part of it. Set the website up and had our first event with an exceptionally good CEO who was CEO of a top 100 company globally, top media company in Australia, and a top finance company. So he's done it all, and he's been chairman of lots of things, and smart dude. So I interviewed him. He'd just written the book. And then we've got another tech founder that's coming up to his 3rd exit. So these are all just friends that I've worked with over the years, and they've just got incredible knowledge to share. And
it sounds like fun too.
It is fun. It is fun. It is fun. So that's called Start Growth. And the second business, and then we're in the premises of Audio HQ, and that's been set up to.
It's a beautiful spot.
It's a beautiful spot. That's been set up so that we can help fund and write artists, musical artists, hit records, and we're also looking at setting up a management division for some very select entertainers that we think that we can help progress. And then one that's probably a bit more close to home, which is in the property space, called Prop Data IQ. And that is for developers to help them buy sites better, faster, and cheaper. To learn on the job is a very expensive way to learn. You have to actually roll the dice and say, let's see how we go, is $100,000 for an entry cost just to get reports, etc. We can do that in a minute. What they do in months through very, very eloquent algorithms, machine learning, AI, and again, it comes back to people. So handpicked, some friends that I've worked with and that are best in breed in financial and property analysis and also machine learning and AI. And myself, do what I do. And we launched that about 24th of August, and we've already got a wait list that's very big.
That's great.
For the
that's
product.
Right. Very exciting.
Yeah, I'm really chuffed with that. And the last thing is the business upstairs, which is we call Oxygen Farm. And what we do in that is we take heat from any source and we plumb that through to two types of containers, both mobile and fixed. And in that we grow a number of different plants and also all sorts of other things that we're looking at and experimenting with. That produce is saleable, but also it increases the efficiency of many businesses, from data centres. And that's one of the most fast-growing areas on the planet. Every new business needs data, more data centres, in turn, more space and more heat, energy, etc. So our product, our solution, reduces the amount of energy required, but it also, which in turn reduces the price of the service, which makes a huge difference to people's businesses across the board. And then also what it does is that we are in advanced stages. We know that what it does is it reduces carbon. So they're essentially the recipients that this heat goes into, and it's waste heat. That's the other beauty of this product too. It's waste heat. And it goes into these containers, and that generates a carbon certificate. The price of carbon, certainly in the next year especially, is going to go through the roof. That's the expectation. And through that process, people are buying carbon offsets. We will be creating carbon offsets at a reasonable scale too. We can go to the market and sell those credits, or the parties have the end-to-end solution. They get those credits if they want.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Interesting, diverse businesses, mate. Very, very...
We're not in accounting anymore, Dorothy.
No, very, very diverse. When you think about AI technology, I mean, it's been pretty mind-blowing the last few months, really. I mean, how do you see that as a tool? How do you see that impacting, I guess, the way business is done? Have you had some thoughts on...
Yeah, fundamentally. Yeah. Like, for example, the Oxygen Farm. You can imagine how many people it takes to run a site, from growing plants inside a container 24/7. We use software that one of the founders wrote. That software controls the temperature, the humidity, flow of water and nutrients, the mix of water and nutrients and pH levels. And it's basically like having, if I was Steve Jobs, I might describe it like having 1,000 farmers in your pocket or in your container that never get tired and they just keep working. So it's endemic. It's everywhere. It's these generative AI models are being applied. Maybe the last 5% of the some really great companies, and it was really interesting to see Canva acquire one of the AI companies recently, through to some of the success of Jasper and a lot of those. Well, certainly Jasper heavily relied on OpenAI, and people have found use cases for that and solved real-world problems with it. And it's certainly early days, but people are being very, very creative with it. I saw a thing called Character AI and creating, and other entities or companies creating companions. We're confronting almost,
Mind-blowing stuff.
Mind-blowing space, ethical issues.
Yeah.
Like, is this good or a bad thing? One disaster, one hack away from a disaster. Are we, obviously Elon and a lot of other people are light year more information than me, talk about the safety of AI, etc.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but if you're not using it and finding out its limits and working out how to use it and be inside this, it's like you're missing out. You've got to be in it.
Yeah, it's crucial, isn't it? Probably just a few questions to sort of wrap up the conversation. This podcast is called the Relentless Customer Leader. When you think of the term relentless, what does that sort of mean to you? Is it something that resonates as a term?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no business without customers. So a business isn't set and forget. It is a continuous improvement process. It's a 2-3 way conversation with customers. It's between your team, your customer, the company, and the services you provide, the solutions, etc. It's that constant getting better. It's a constant more value, more ways to show up, more learnings, more data, more insights. It doesn't stop.
Yeah. It's ongoing.
And hence, relentless is probably fairly appropriate. But anyone that thinks that a business is passive, it's relentless. You can't stop. People talk about, and I think Tim Ferriss talked about, the 4-hour work week. He said, well, it was sort of a bit of a joke at the time, but people do want that work-life balance, and that's really, as I said, the fourth swim lane is of Start Growth is health and wellness and being up for the challenges and keeping yourself mentally and physically healthy. So it is relentless. So recognising that you have to look after your customers, yourself, your team. Maybe one day we'll have everything run on AI and we won't be required. It'll be a sad day, but
it's always the promise of new technology, isn't it? We're going to have more leisure time.
More leisure time. We'll do more high value things, etc. But I don't know. I like dealing with. There'll be still to this day. There'll be. I remember a joke that someone said the last job that'll be lost to AI are comedians. But it's there'll always be more jobs. I remember when I started out working, they talked about I was year 2 into my career, and they said, self-assessment's coming out. No one's going to need a tax agent anymore. Well, there's still tax agents. There's just new things tax agents do.
That's right. It's different work, but it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah. Someone's got to run these systems, don't they?
Someone has to run them. Someone has to. Yeah, exactly.
Probably the last question then that I had for you is, do you have sort of some advice for up-and-coming leaders? What's something that you would sort of emerging leaders in terms of their own leadership journey and being able to build capabilities themselves?
I think that for new leaders, it's not to think you got it. It's to think, to keep learning, to keep... I say about myself, I make less mistakes because I never think I know. And because I always think, what have I missed? And maybe having a healthy skepticism of you've got to get it right doesn't mean you're right. And learning and saying, how can I make it better? It's not done yet. If you get to the end, you're not finished. You've got to ask another question. How can I do better? What did I learn? How can I reflect on action, for action, and inaction? What if I am going to start to think about it being better? I should use a thinking model. So rather than just a random thought, I can assess what I did, work out which bit's better. People struggle to have the tools to work out what is it about performance that makes the performance better. And a lot of people think, well, we just need to try harder, or we need to work longer hours, or we need to have more work-life balance. But all of those things are guesses. By being able to have a better level of insight on what happened, so asking questions like, what did you see? And then, did the person do a good job in spite of themselves or because of something? So it's that continuous curiosity and that having the right level of curiosity and conviction. Because people don't want to go, I don't know, and you go, oh, you don't know. Oh my God, you don't know. But
balance of
it's a balance. It's a balance of curiosity and conviction. And that's what people look for in a good leader, I think, is that we know this and we've anchored that. So we know what we did and that worked because of that. We're not like, oh, we'll do it again this time again. And building those systems and setting people up so they win more often is having some system thinking. But it's also finding the person that's going to help you do that. Because, that has to be done. You might not be the right person to do it, but you've got to find the right person that loves doing it. Or bring someone or leverage someone off by doing, we'll do this together. I mean, my favourite analogy or story of any business or startup is like that chicken who found the grains of wheat. And so the chicken comes up, and everyone remembers the story. The chicken found this wheat, and he said, who will help me grind this wheat so I can make some flour? And he went up to the cow and said, not I. And then said, okay, I'll do it myself. And as you know, he eventually went through a number of people, and then as soon as he pulled out the loaf of bread, everyone wanted to have the bread. And I thought, that was the end of the story. And then I thought, no, but what did the chicken do wrong? The chicken didn't sell the story.
No.
The chicken didn't
tell the narrative.
The chicken didn't tell the narrative. So, Chris, can you taste that bread? Yeah. How sweet is that bread going to be when it comes out of the oven, piping hot, and we're all going to get around the table and we're going to laugh and we're going to have some of this beautiful bread. Now, do you want to help me?
So that's a great story, isn't it?
It's a great story. I love it. That's what a startup is. Like, you've got no reason to believe these 2 grains of wheat are going to turn into bread with the right people and that relentless execution, or epic execution, as I call it. Amazing things can happen.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks for your time, mate. That was great. Great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.